The heart monitor screamed flatline at 11:47 p.m. Cold spread through my chest as nurses rushed in shouting codes I couldn't understand. Somewhere across town, my mother lifted a champagne glass under golden chandeliers. "To Daniel," she announced, smiling, "our golden son." The hospital called her twice. She saw the number. She let it ring. 3 days later, my brother called her sobbing. "I got fired." She asked, "By who?" She didn't know I was the answer. Have you ever almost died and realized your family wouldn't have noticed? The stories on this channel are created solely for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. While some stories are inspired by real situations submitted by viewers via email, most details have been fictionalized, combined, or altered. My name is Vanessa Rivera. I'm 36 years old, Senior Vice President at Whitmore Capital Partners, one of the most respected private equity firms on the East Coast. On paper, I've built the kind of life my parents dreamed about when they first came to this country. But to them, I've always been an afterthought. I'm telling you this story from 3 months after my heart stopped in that hospital room. 3 months of clarity I wish I'd had decades ago. Because looking back now, I can trace every moment that led to that flat line, and it all started with the same simple truth in the Rivera family. I was never the one who mattered. My parents came to America with $17 and a suitcase held together by prayer. They worked 3 jobs between them, saved every penny, and built their entire future around one belief: their son would lift this family into respect. Daniel was their investment, their golden ticket, their proof that the sacrifice was worth it. Me, I was the backup plan no one talked about. Every childhood memory I have is painted with the same brush. My 8th birthday was postponed because Daniel had a soccer tournament. My high school graduation speech was cut short because Daniel had a summer job interview the next morning, and we needed to leave early. When I graduated college summa cum laude, my mother spent the entire dinner talking about Daniel's new apartment. She didn't ask a single question about my honors thesis. The message was never spoken aloud, but I absorbed it like poison. Daniel's life was the headline. Mine was the footnote. When Daniel failed calculus in high school, my parents hired 3 tutors. When he crashed his car at 19, they bought him a new one before the insurance check cleared. When he got caught cheating on an exam in college, they hired a lawyer who made the whole thing disappear. Daniel could stumble, fall, and burn everything down around him, and my parents would rebuild it before the smoke cleared. I watched all of this and learned to need nothing. I earned scholarships because no one offered to pay. I built my career in silence because no one asked about my work. And somewhere along the way, I became the invisible shield that held this family together while everyone pretended I didn't exist. What no one ever acknowledged was this: I've been saving Daniel for 15 years. When he nearly failed out of business school, I rewrote his papers at midnight after my own 80-hour work weeks. When his first employer fired him for attitude problems, I called in favors I'd spent years building. When his credit card debt spiraled to $30,000 and collectors started calling, I paid it off myself. No one thanked me. No one even mentioned it, because helping Daniel wasn't seen as sacrifice. It was simply what Vanessa did. My family knows I'm successful. They know my title, my salary, the view from my corner office. But every holiday dinner, my mother reduces my entire career to 6 words: Vanessa does something with money. Then she pivots to Daniel's latest promotion, his new project, his bright future. My father nods along. Daniel accepts the praise like oxygen he's entitled to breathe. For 36 years, I told myself this was just how families worked. Some children shine while others hold the spotlight steady. I told myself I didn't need their approval, their attention, their love. I was strong, I was capable, I was fine. I didn't know that one ordinary night my body would finally collapse under the weight of being fine. I didn't know that while I lay dying in a hospital bed, my family would be raising champagne glasses to celebrate the son they actually loved. And I certainly didn't know that what happened next would change everything I believed about blood loyalty and the true cost of being invisible. The night that changed everything began like any other. I had been working 16-hour days for 3 months straight, pushing through a massive acquisition that could make or break my career. My body had been sending warnings I refused to hear. Dizzy spells in the elevator, chest tightness during conference calls, hands that trembled when I reached for my coffee. I ignored all of it because Rivera women do not stop. Rivera women do not complain. Rivera women certainly do not admit weakness. That night, I was alone in my office at 11 o'clock, reviewing contracts by the blue light of my computer screen. The building was empty. The cleaning crew had come and gone hours ago. I remember standing up to refill my water glass. I remember the room tilting sideways. I remember thinking how strange the carpet looked from that angle pressed against my cheek. And then I remember nothing at all. Marcus Webb, my assistant, had forgotten his laptop charger. He came back to grab it and found me crumpled on the floor between my desk and the window. He told me later that my lips were blue and I was barely breathing. He called 911 and rode with me in the ambulance holding my hand while paramedics worked to keep me alive. In that ambulance, my heart stopped for the first time. They shocked me back. I have no memory of it, but Marcus does. He still cannot talk about those minutes without his voice cracking. The diagnosis came later. Long QT syndrome, a genetic heart condition I never knew I had. It had been hiding inside me my whole life, waiting for the right trigger. Months of stress, no sleep, and skipped meals finally gave it what it needed. My own heart betrayed me, and I never saw it coming. From the emergency room, Marcus called my emergency contact, my mother, Gloria Rivera. The call went through at 7:23 that evening. A doctor spoke to her directly. The conversation lasted 2 minutes and 47 seconds. I know this because I later requested the hospital phone records. I needed to understand what happened. I needed proof that I was not imagining things. The doctor told my mother that her daughter was in critical condition. He told her I had experienced cardiac arrest. He told her the family needed to come to the hospital immediately. My mother listened. She asked a few questions, and then she said, "I understand. Thank you, doctor." She hung up the phone. She turned to my father, my brother, and a room full of guests gathered to celebrate Daniel's big promotion. And she said, "That was the hospital. Vanessa fainted at work. They're always so dramatic about these things. You know how she overworks herself. She'll be fine. Let's not ruin Daniel's night. I need you to understand something. My mother was not being deliberately cruel. She was not a monster who wanted her daughter to suffer. She was something almost worse. She was a woman so deeply invested in her own story that she could not let reality interrupt it. In her mind, Vanessa was always fine. Vanessa was always strong. Vanessa did not need anyone because Vanessa had never needed anyone. She had believed this for 36 years. She could not stop believing it now. Not when Daniel was finally having his moment, not when everything she had sacrificed was finally paying off. So the champagne kept flowing, the toasts kept coming, the golden sun basked in the glow of his family's adoration, and across town I lay in an ICU bed with a machine breathing for me completely alone. At 3 in the morning, my heart went into arrhythmia again. Alarms screamed through the unit. Nurses came running. Someone yelled for the crash cart. In my half-conscious state, I drifted somewhere between life and death, and I saw things that still haunt me. I saw my family gathered around a table covered in empty champagne glasses. I saw my mother laughing at something Daniel said. I saw my father raising a toast. And I saw myself as a little girl standing by the front door in a party dress waiting for someone to remember it was my birthday. No one came. No one ever came. I woke up alone. The room was gray with early morning light. My throat hurt from the tube they had removed. Every part of my body felt heavy and wrong. And in the chair beside my bed, slumped over with exhaustion, was Marcus, my assistant, the man who retrieved forgotten chargers and scheduled my meetings. He was the only person who had stayed. When he woke up and saw my eyes open, he nearly cried with relief. He squeezed my hand and told me the doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Then I asked the question I was afraid to ask. Did my family call? Marcus hesitated. I watched him struggle with how much truth to tell me. Finally, he said, "Your mom called this morning. She asked if you needed anything. She said they would try to visit once Daniel's celebration wrapped up. My heart had stopped twice. I had nearly died alone on a hospital floor. And my mother's priority was making sure nothing interrupted my brother's party. I did not cry. I was too empty for tears. I just closed my eyes and let the words sink into a place where all the other wounds lived. On the second day, someone finally came. But it was not my mother or my father or my brother. It was my Aunt Elena, my mother's younger sister, a woman I had seen only in glimpses for the past 15 years. Elena had been erased from our family long ago. Her crime was honesty. She had watched my mother pour everything into Daniel while I faded into the background, and she had made the mistake of saying something. She told Gloria that her favoritism would destroy both her children, that she was crippling Daniel with dependence, and breaking me with neglect. My mother called her jealous and toxic and dramatic. She cut Elena out of every family gathering, every holiday, every conversation. It was as if Elena had never existed. But Elena had never stopped reaching out to me. Birthday cards that arrived without return addresses, occasional coffee dates she kept secret, small reminders that someone in this family saw me. Marcus found her number in my phone and made the call my own mother should have made. She sat beside my bed and took my hand. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I know exactly how this feels," she said. "Your mother did the same thing to me. I was the daughter who didn't matter in our family. And when I tried to warn her about what she was doing to you, she erased me from existence." I looked at this woman who had loved me quietly from the margins for so many years. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you make me understand?" "I tried," she said. "When you were 20, I tried. You weren't ready to hear it. You still believed if you just worked harder, achieved more, they would finally see you. And then the years passed, and I was afraid. Afraid that if I pushed too hard, I would lose you too." I lay there in that hospital bed, machines beeping around me, my heart monitored by wires and technology because my own body could no longer be trusted. I thought about 36 years of being strong, 36 years of amassing for nothing, 36 years of holding up a family that would not cross town to watch me die. The doctors said I was lucky. They said I should focus on recovery and gratitude. But lying there with my aunt's hand in mine and my family's absence filling the room like smoke, I did not feel lucky. I felt something I had never allowed myself to feel before. Rage, not the hot explosive kind that burns out fast. This was cold rage, the kind that does not scream or throw things, the kind that sits quietly and plans, the kind that waits. I had spent 36 years being the invisible shield that protected everyone but myself. I had nearly died holding it up. It was finally time to put it down. Recovery was slow and humbling. The doctors implanted a small device in my chest called an ICD, a tiny machine that would shock my heart back to rhythm if it ever betrayed me again. I took medications that made me tired and foggy. I attended cardiology appointments every week where strangers monitored the organ my own family could not be bothered to worry about. For the first 6 weeks, I worked from home following strict orders to avoid stress. The irony was not lost on me. Stress had nearly killed me, and now I was supposed to pretend it did not exist. I did not call my family during those weeks. They called once. My mother's voice came through the phone, bright and distracted the way it always sounded when she was thinking about something else. "Feeling better?" "Good, good. Listen, Daniel's promotion came with a big bonus. We're so proud of him. Your father wants to take everyone to dinner next month to celebrate properly." She talked for 3 minutes without asking a single question about my health, my recovery, or whether I was even alive in any meaningful sense. When she finally paused for breath, I said nothing. I simply hung up. That was the last time I answered their calls. Something had shifted inside me during those days in the hospital. The cold rage I felt had not disappeared. It had settled into something quieter and more permanent. I was done being the daughter who understood. I was done being the sister who fixed everything. I was done being invisible. What my family did not know, what they had never bothered to ask about, was the full scope of my work at Whitmore Capital Partners. 8 months before my heart stopped, my firm began the process of acquiring a mid-sized financial company called Sterling and Associates. It was a routine acquisition, the kind I had overseen dozens of times, but this one had a complication. My brother Daniel worked at Sterling. He had been there for 4 years, climbing slowly through the ranks while I quietly cleaned up his messes from a distance. The moment I learned Sterling was our target, I did what any ethical executive would do. I disclosed the conflict of interest immediately in writing to our board of directors and our legal team. I recused myself from all personnel decisions related to Sterling employees. Every conversation, every email, every meeting was documented. I built a paper trail so clean that no one could ever accuse me of impropriety. This was not strategy. This was simply how I operated. I had spent my entire career being twice as careful as everyone else because I knew that women like me, women who came from nothing and climbed through sheer force of will, could not afford a single mistake. Here is the truth I have never told anyone. Before the hospital, I had a plan. I knew that acquisitions meant audits, and audits meant scrutiny. I knew that Daniel's work habits were sloppy at best and fraudulent at worst. I had been covering for him so long that I knew exactly where the bodies were buried. My plan was simple. If the audit uncovered anything serious, I would warn Daniel privately, give him a chance to resign with dignity before the hammer fell, protect him one last time, not because he deserved it, but because that was what I had always done. That was before I died alone in the ICU, while my family drank champagne. After the hospital, I had no plan at all. I simply stopped calling, stopped checking on him, stopped thinking about what Daniel might need. For the first time in 15 years, I let the system work exactly as it was designed to work. The audit team did their job with the thoroughness I expected. They combed through expense reports, client billing records, and personnel files. They found irregularities almost immediately, a pattern of questionable charges that traced back to a single employee. The name in their report was D. Rivera. They had no idea he was my brother. Daniel used a different professional name, and I had kept our relationship out of every company record. To the auditors, he was just another mid-level manager with dirty hands. The findings were damning. $52,000 in fraudulent expense claims over 3 years. Falsified client meeting reports where Daniel billed for lunches and dinners that never happened. And buried in his personnel file, a harassment complaint from a junior analyst that had been quietly swept away by Daniel's manager, a man he played golf with every Saturday. The audit team compiled everything into a report and sent it up the chain. When the file reached a certain level, our legal department informed me as a formality. They knew about my recusal. They were simply following protocol. A young attorney sat across from me in my home office, laptop open, and asked if I wanted to be involved in the decision about Daniel Rivera's employment. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about all the times I had saved him, the papers I rewrote, the debts I paid, the jobs I found, the fires I extinguished before anyone smelled smoke. I thought about lying in a hospital bed while my mother told everyone I was fine. No, I said. I don't want to be involved. Follow standard protocol. Whatever you would do if he were anyone else, do exactly that. I did not say fire him. I did not say protect him. I offered no opinion at all. I simply stepped back and let the machinery of corporate justice grind forward without my hand on the wheel. Daniel was terminated for cause 2 weeks later. Ethical violations, expense fraud, falsified records. The company denied his severance and reserved the right to pursue civil recovery of the misappropriated funds. His file was referred to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. In the world of finance, that referral alone is a death sentence. Even if charges were never filed, the stain would follow him forever. No reputable firm would touch him. I learned about the termination through official channels the same way I would have learned about any other employee. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a strange, hollow calm, like standing in a room where something heavy used to sit. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was my mother, and for the first time in weeks, I answered. Gloria was hysterical. Daniel just called me. He's crying. They fired him, Vanessa. They're saying he committed fraud. This is insane. You have to help him. You work in that industry. You know people. You have to fix this. I let her finish. I let the familiar rhythm of her demands wash over me, the assumption that I would drop everything, the certainty that fixing Daniel's problems was simply what I did. Then I spoke and my voice was calm. I recused myself from Daniel's case 8 months ago. I had nothing to do with his termination. The audit found what it found. And no, I will not fix this. Daniel is 33 years old. It's time he fixed himself. The silence on the other end stretched for a long moment. My mother had never heard me say no, not once in 36 years. Vanessa, he's your brother. Yes, I said. He is. And he's also a grown man who committed fraud. Those two things can both be true. I hung up, my hands were not shaking. My heart, monitored by the device in my chest, beat steady and slow. For the first time in my life, I had done nothing for Daniel. And doing nothing felt like the most powerful thing I had ever done. But I knew this was not over. Daniel would not accept this quietly. He had never faced a consequence he could not escape. and my mother would not rest until someone fixed her golden sun. The real confrontation was coming. I could feel it gathering like a storm on the horizon. The storm arrived faster than I expected. Within days of Daniel's termination, whispers began spreading through the halls of Whitmore Capital Partners. I heard them in the silence that fell when I entered a room. I saw them in the sideways glances from colleagues who used to greet me warmly. Someone had connected the dots. Vanessa Rivera's brother was fired from Sterling. Vanessa Rivera led the acquisition team. The math wrote itself in everyone's imagination. A rival SVP named Richard Thornton saw his opportunity. Richard had been competing with me for years, always one step behind, always bitter about it. He formally requested an ethics committee review, claiming I had used my position to retaliate against my own brother. The accusation was absurd to anyone who knew the facts, but accusations do not need to be true to cause damage. They only need to be loud. While my professional reputation hung in the balance, my mother launched her own assault. The voicemails piled up, each one more vicious than the last. "How could you do this to your family? Daniel is falling apart. He won't eat. He won't leave his room. If something happens to him, it's on your conscience, Vanessa. You did this. You destroyed your own brother." Her voice cracked with theatrical grief, the performance of a mother wounded by her ungrateful daughter. She had spent 36 years perfecting this guilt, and she deployed it now like a weapon she knew would hit its target. The old Vanessa would have crumbled under this pressure. She would have called HR in a panic, begging them to reconsider. She would have driven to her parents' house to apologize for existing, for succeeding, for failing to save Daniel one more time. But that Vanessa had died in a hospital bed 2 months ago. This Vanessa gathered every disclosure document, every recusal form, every email trail that proved her ethical conduct. She prepared her defense with the same precision she brought to billion-dollar deals. But at night alone in my apartment, the guilt found me anyway. It crept in through the cracks of my resolve, whispering the same poison my mother had been feeding me since childhood. What if I was wrong? What if I could have saved him? What if I was just as cruel as they always said I was? At 2 in the morning, I called Aunt Elena. My voice was shaking when she answered. "What if I'm the villain here? What if I'm just as bad as them? I could have warned Daniel. I could have given him a chance to resign before the audit caught him. I could have—" Elena cut me off with the firmness of someone who had been waiting years to say these words. Could have what saved him from his own fraud covered up for him one more time so he could keep stealing and lying and hurting people. Vanessa, you did not create this situation. Daniel created it with 3 years of fake expense reports and buried harassment complaints. You just stopped cleaning up after him. But I feel so guilty, I whispered. Of course you do, she said. They programmed you to feel guilty. Think about it. Every time you succeeded at something, your mother found a way to make you apologize for it. Every time you needed something for yourself, they made you feel selfish and demanding. That guilt you're carrying right now, it doesn't belong to you. It was installed in you like software, like a leash they could yank whenever they needed you to fall in line. And they're yanking it now because it has always worked before. I sat in the darkness of my living room, letting her words sink into places I had protected for decades. She was right. The guilt was not mine. It was a tool they had built and sharpened and used against me my entire life. It's not working anymore, I said. The ethics committee review lasted 3 weeks. They interviewed colleagues, reviewed documents, analyzed timelines. They examined every decision I had made regarding the Sterling acquisition, and when they finished, their conclusion was unambiguous. No wrongdoing found. I had disclosed the conflict of interest 8 months before the acquisition closed. I had recused myself properly and completely. I had no involvement whatsoever in Daniel's termination. In fact, the committee cited my conduct as exemplary, a model of how executives should handle potential conflicts. Richard Thornton's credibility collapsed. The matter was closed. But the vindication meant more to me than just professional survival. For the first time in my life, an institution outside my family had examined my actions and declared me innocent. It was external proof that I had done nothing wrong, not just my conscience telling me I was justified. The system itself validated what I already knew. Armed with that validation, I agreed to see my family when they demanded a meeting. They came to my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. My mother, my father, and Daniel. I let them in and waited for the storm I knew was coming. Daniel attacked first. You destroyed my career. You used your position to punish me because you've always been jealous. I kept my voice level. I had nothing to do with your termination. I recused myself 8 months ago. Your fraud destroyed your career. Would you like to see the audit report? $52,000 in fake expenses, falsified client meetings, a harassment complaint you buried with your golf buddy's help. That was all you, Daniel. Every bit of it. My mother jumped in her face, twisted with the righteous anger of a woman who had never been challenged. You've always been jealous of Daniel. You couldn't stand that we loved him more. You're right, I said calmly. You did love him more. You planned it that way from the beginning. The room went silent. My mother stared at me like I had slapped her. I know about the scholarship, Mom. Her face went white. Aunt Elena had told me everything before this confrontation. 10 years ago, I applied for a prestigious MBA fellowship. Full tuition, living expenses, a guaranteed path to the career I had always dreamed of. I was a finalist. I thought I had a real chance. And then I lost, and I never understood why. Now, I knew. My mother had called the selection committee. She posed as a concerned family friend and told them I had emotional instability issues and a history of exaggerating my achievements. The committee quietly moved on to another candidate. My own mother sabotaged my future to protect her investment in Daniel. You didn't want me to succeed too much, I said. Because if I succeeded, it would make Daniel look bad. You couldn't let the backup plan outshine the main attraction. I was protecting this family, she sputtered. You were protecting your retirement plan. Daniel was your ticket to respect. I was just insurance in case he failed. My father spoke for the first time. She's right. Everyone turned to look at him. Roberto Rivera, the man who had spent his entire life nodding along with whatever my mother decided. I've known for years, he said quietly. The scholarship, the way we treated Vanessa, the will that gives 75% to Daniel and 25% to her. I knew it was wrong. I said nothing because I wanted peace. I stared at the man who had raised me. You let Mom destroy my opportunities so you could have peace. He had no answer. There was no answer that could make sense of decades of cowardice. I turned back to my mother and the hospital call. 2 minutes and 47 seconds. You heard the doctor say I was in critical condition. You heard him say my heart stopped. And you hung up and told everyone I just had a cold. You didn't think I mattered enough to ruin Daniel's party. I know. I finally know exactly where I stand in this family. And I'm done standing there. They left in silence. No apology from my mother, just tears she expected me to comfort. No accountability from Daniel, just rage. He expected me to absorb, but my father lingered at the door. He looked at me, really looked at me for what felt like the first time in my life. I'm sorry, he said. I know it's not enough. No, I replied. It's not, but it's a start. My father's apology hung in the air long after he walked out of my apartment that day. It was the first honest thing he had said to me in 36 years, and I held onto it like a small flame in a dark room. Not because it fixed anything. It did not. But because it proved that change was possible, even for people who had spent decades looking the other way. The months that followed brought consequences I did not have to orchestrate. The district attorney's office moved forward with criminal charges against Daniel. $52,000 in fraud was too significant to ignore, especially when the corporation cooperated fully with the investigation. Daniel's lawyer, a public defender who had seen 1,000 cases like his, advised him to take a plea deal. Plead guilty to felony fraud, 3 years probation, full restitution to Sterling and Associates, 200 hours of community service. No prison time, but a felony conviction that would follow him for the rest of his life. Daniel refused. He was still waiting for someone to rescue him. He had never faced a problem that could not be solved by someone else's money or influence, and he could not accept that this time was different. So, my mother emptied half of her retirement savings, $80,000 she had spent decades accumulating to hire a better lawyer, a fancy attorney with a corner office and an impressive reputation. This lawyer reviewed the evidence, consulted with colleagues, and gave Daniel the exact same advice. Take the deal. You will lose at trial. Daniel took the deal. The judge accepted his guilty plea on a Tuesday morning in a courtroom I did not attend. The consequences were immediate and permanent. Felony conviction on his record, searchable by any future employer forever, barred from working in any licensed financial role, which meant his entire career was over. Full restitution payments that would take years to complete. his name entered into court records that anyone could find with a simple internet search. The golden son my parents had invested everything in was now a convicted felon living under court supervision. His wife, Jessica, filed for divorce the week after sentencing. I learned this through a text message she sent me late one night. "I realized I never knew him," she wrote. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you." I thanked her for reaching out. I meant it. She was another victim of the person my family had created, and I held no anger toward her. My mother's carefully constructed world collapsed in slow motion. She lost her retirement savings to Daniel's legal fees. She lost her reputation when news of his conviction spread through their community, through their church, through the network of relatives she had spent years impressing with stories of her successful son. She lost her golden child to a felony record and a divorce and a future that looked nothing like the dream she had built. And then came the cruelest irony of all. Daniel moved back home. The 33-year-old investment who was supposed to lift the family into respect was now unemployable, divorced, and living in his childhood bedroom. The son she had sacrificed everything for became the burden she had to carry. The retirement she had imagined supported by Daniel's success would never come. She called me once during this time. Her voice was thin and broken in a way I had never heard before. "Everything I did for this family. How did it all go so wrong?" I considered the question carefully before I answered. "You invested everything in one child and nothing in the other. You sacrificed me to build him up, and it didn't work. Not because Daniel is worthless, but because you taught him he never had to earn anything. You didn't raise a son, Mom. You raised a dependent, and now you have to live with what you created." She had no response. She did not call me again. I did not cut my family off completely. That would have been easy, and I have never chosen the easy path. Instead, I set conditions, clear boundaries that required action, not just words. To my father, who continued reaching out with small gestures and careful messages, I said this: "If you want me in your life, you need to show me through actions that you see me, that you respect me. Start by going to therapy. Deal with why you stayed silent for 36 years while Mom destroyed my opportunities." He enrolled in counseling the following week. He sends me updates sometimes, short messages that say he is trying, that he is learning, that he wishes he had been braver. I do not know if our relationship will ever be what it should have been, but I know he is finally doing the work, and that matters. To my mother, I said, "I don't need your apology to move forward with my own life, but I won't have a relationship built on pretending the last 36 years didn't happen. When you're ready to tell the truth to yourself, not just to me, we can talk." She was not ready. She may never be ready. Some people cannot survive the weight of their own honesty. I have made peace with that possibility. To Daniel, I said nothing at all. He called once asking me to help him find work. His voice had the same entitled expectation it always carried, as if my purpose in life was still to solve his problems. I told him this was the first time in his life he had to build something himself, and maybe that was the best thing that could ever happen to him. I wished him well. I meant it. Then I blocked his number. My life did not become empty when I stopped carrying my family. It became clearer. The people who actually mattered came into focus. Marcus got promoted to a senior position partly because I recommended him, and mostly because he earned it with his own talent and dedication. He remained my closest friend at work and outside of it. The man who found me dying on an office floor became a permanent part of my life, someone I trust completely. Aunt Elena became the family I chose. Sunday dinners at her apartment, holiday trips we planned together. The aunt who was erased from family gatherings for telling the truth became the relative who matters most to me now. I started mentoring young women in finance, especially those who come from complicated families like mine. I share my story with them. I was stunned to discover how many had versions of it. Daughters who were overlooked, sisters who were expected to sacrifice, women who held everything together while everyone pretended they needed nothing. I thought I was alone. I was not. There are millions of us. If you are listening to this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are allowed to put down the shield. You are allowed to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are allowed to choose yourself today, right now, no matter how old you are or how long you have been invisible. I used to think being strong meant never needing help. I was wrong. Being strong means knowing when to stop carrying people who would never carry you. I used to think family meant endless sacrifice. I was wrong. Family means people who show up not because they have to, but because they want to. I used to think I had to earn love by being useful. I was wrong. Love that has to be earned is not love. It is employment. It took me 36 years and a flatlined heart to learn these things. I hope it does not take you that long. I am sitting in my apartment now, the same place where my family confronted me, the same place where I chose myself for the first time. My phone buzzes with messages. Marcus asking about dinner Friday. Elena confirming Sunday brunch. My father telling me about his third therapy session, saying he is thinking of me. I smile. Not because everything is fixed. It is not. Not because I have forgiven everyone. I have not. But because I am finally surrounded by people who see me. People who show up. People who choose me because I matter, not because I am useful. That is what family is supposed to feel like. And at 36 years old, I finally have it. Because saying enough is not selfish. It is survival. Vanessa's story reminds us of a truth many women know but rarely speak aloud. Being capable does not mean you deserve to be overlooked. Being strong does not give others permission to take you for granted. And loving your family does not require you to disappear so they can shine. If you recognized yourself in this story, if you have spent years being the one who gives while others only take, I hope you heard the message clearly. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to demand respect. You are allowed to say enough and mean it. Your worth is not measured by how much you sacrifice for people who would never sacrifice for you. The most powerful thing Vanessa did was not revenge. It was simply stopping. She stopped rescuing. She stopped apologizing. She stopped being invisible. And in that space, she finally found the people who truly deserved her love. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart or reminded you of your own journey, please subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story like this one. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever had to say enough to someone you loved? Your story matters too, and we would love to hear it.